The iron wind. The storm came without warning. Jace Thorne barely made it to the landing bay before the first wave hit. Plasma lightning turned the sky of Pharaoh 7 into a sheet of violent purple, and the wind carried enough ionized particles to strip flesh from bone in seconds. He stumbled through the deserted docks, his work jacket doing nothing against the electromagnetic pressure building in the air. Every ship was locked down or already gone. Every shelter was full. Panic clawed at his chest as another surge lit up the colony's protective dome, revealing spiderweb cracks forming along its surface. He had minutes, maybe less. Then he saw it, an old freighter sitting alone at the edge of the commercial sector. No markings, no lights. The hull was smooth and dark, almost organic in the strange glow of the storm. Jace didn't question his luck. He ran. The airlock opened with a hiss that seemed impossibly smooth for such an ancient-looking vessel. He threw himself inside, slamming his palm against the emergency seal. The door closed behind him just as the dome above the colony shattered with a sound like the universe breaking. Jace collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. The ship's interior was dark but surprisingly warm. Emergency strips along the floor cast a soft amber glow, revealing corridors that curved in ways that didn't quite make sense. The walls seemed to pulse very faintly, as if breathing. Just for the night, he muttered to himself, wiping sweat from his face. Ride out the storm, then head back. But as he moved deeper into the ship searching for supplies, something changed. The amber lights brightened to gold. Panels along the walls began illuminating in sequence, flowing forward like a pathway opening. A low hum built in the floor beneath his boots. No, no, no. Jace turned back toward the airlock. Too late. The entire vessel shuddered. The hum became a roar. Through a viewport, he saw Pharaoh 7 dropping away at impossible speed, the storm shrinking to a purple smudge against the black. Stars streaked past in ribbons of light as the ship jumped, carrying him toward something he couldn't see, couldn't stop, couldn't understand. Jace pressed his forehead against the cold viewport, watching his life disappear behind him. The journey took 3 days, though he had no way to mark time except by sleep. The ship provided everything. Food materialized in a small alcove, water flowed from carved fountains, even his clothes were cleaned while he slept in the single chamber he'd found. It was as if the vessel itself was caring for him. On the 3rd day, the viewport filled with light. Daughters of the Void. The light resolved into a structure so vast that Jace's mind struggled to comprehend it. A generation ship, kilometers long, rotating slowly in the darkness between stars. Its surface was covered in crystalline formations that caught and refracted distant starlight, making the entire vessel glow with soft blues and violets. As his freighter approached, docking clamps extended like welcoming arms. Jace stood in the airlock, heart hammering. The moment the seal connected, the door opened to reveal 3 figures waiting in the corridor beyond. Women. Human in shape but utterly unlike anyone he'd ever seen. Their skin held an inner luminescence, and patterns of light moved beneath the surface, flowing symbols that shifted with each breath, each emotion. They wore garments made of fabric that seemed woven from starlight itself, clinging to forms that were elegant and strong. The tallest stepped forward. Her hair was the color of deep space, and her eyes held flecks of gold that reminded him of distant suns. The light patterns on her skin pulsed in what might have been a greeting. "I am Mirren Ashwin," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that resonated in his chest. "Speaker for the Stellari. We have waited 3 generations for the storm to send you." "I don't understand," Jace managed. "I'm just a cargo hauler. There's been a mistake." Another woman moved closer, younger, with copper-toned skin and patterns that flickered like fire. "The ship chose you," she said, studying him with open curiosity. "I am Nessa Court, and there are no mistakes in the old ways." Mirren gestured gracefully toward the corridor. "You must be exhausted from the journey."
Come?
"We will explain everything." They led him through passages that defied logic, curving upward and around in ways that made his head spin. Everywhere he looked, more Stellari women moved about their lives, tending gardens that grew in impossible spirals, maintaining crystalline machinery, gathered in circles where their skin patterns synchronized into complex cascading rhythms. "Where are the men?" Jace asked quietly. Mirren's expression grew sad. Gone. A genetic plague, centuries ago, before we left our dying world. Only women survived. We have endured, but our numbers fade with each generation. Our ship fades too. She brought him to a vast chamber at the ship's heart. The walls were transparent, revealing the star engines below, once mighty cores now flickering weakly, their lights stuttering like dying candles. Our ancestors built Celestara to find a new home, Mirren continued. But we lost our way. The old navigation systems require a genetic key we no longer possess. Our propulsion fails. Our life support deteriorates. Within 2 years, perhaps less, we will drift dead in the void. Nessa moved to stand beside Jace, close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. The prophecy spoke of a wanderer carried by iron wind. One who carries the ancient markers in his blood. One who can wake what sleeps. You want me to fix your engines? Jace looked between them, overwhelmed. We want you to save us, Mirren said softly. Her hand rose as if to touch his face, then hesitated. If you will. If you choose to stay. The patterns on her skin had shifted to something that looked almost like hope. Between two hearts. The days that followed felt like living in a dream. Mirren assigned him quarters near the observation deck, a circular room with walls that displayed the cosmos in perfect clarity. The Stellari brought him food, strange fruits that tasted like starlight and honey, broths that warmed him from the inside out. But more than sustenance, they offered knowledge. Mirren came each morning to teach him their language. She would sit close, her luminescent patterns shifting to illustrate meanings that words alone couldn't convey. When she spoke of sadness, dark blues rippled across her skin. When she laughed, a rare, precious sound, gold and amber danced along her arms. Your people express so much with just your face, she observed one morning, watching him intently. We forgot how to do that, I think. We put everything into the light. It's beautiful, Jace said without thinking. Then, realizing how that sounded, added quickly, the patterns, I mean. The way you communicate. Mirren's skin flushed with soft pink, embarrassment or pleasure, he couldn't tell. Thank you, Jace Thorne. You are kind to say so. Their fingers brushed as she handed him a data tablet. The touch sent warmth up his arm, and he saw her patterns flare in response before she pulled away gracefully. But if his mornings belonged to Mirren, his afternoons were claimed by Nessa. The engineer took him deep into Celestara's infrastructure, showing him the massive conduits and crystalline processors that kept the ship alive. She moved through the mechanical spaces with confidence and passion, explaining systems that blended technology with something almost biological. Touch here, she instructed one afternoon, guiding his hand to a pulsing interface. Feel how it responds. The ship is alive in its way. It knows when someone cares. Her hand remained over his, pressing his palm against the warm crystal. The patterns on her skin blazed bright orange, and Jace found himself very aware of how close she stood, the curve of her body just inches away. Nessa, he said carefully. I should tell you, I'm not sure I can do what you need. I work on simple cargo haulers, not generation ships with living systems. She turned to face him fully, and the intensity in her eyes made his breath catch. You already do more than you know. Since you arrived, our power efficiency has improved by 3%. The ship responds to you. It wants you here. And what do you want? The question escaped before he could stop it. Nessa's patterns flared white-hot for just a moment. Then she stepped back, expression unreadable. I want my people to survive. Whatever that requires. But that night, as Jace stood on the observation deck watching stars wheel past, Mirren found him there. She wore a flowing garment that left her shoulders bare, and the patterns dancing across her skin were the deep purple of twilight. You are troubled, she said softly, joining him at the viewport. I'm in over my head, Jace admitted. Your prophecy, this destiny you think I have, what if I'm just a mechanic who got lucky? What if I fail you? Mirren was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her skin was impossibly soft and warm. The light patterns flowed from her fingers into his, creating bridges of luminescence between them. Then you fail, she whispered. But you will have tried. You will have stayed when you could have demanded to leave. That alone makes you more than we dared hope for. She lifted his hand and pressed it gently against her cheek. The gesture was so tender, so full of unspoken longing, that Jace felt something shift in his chest. He raised his other hand slowly, cupping her face, watching patterns of rose and gold bloom beneath his touch. Mirren. She closed the distance between them, and when their lips met, it was soft and searching, a question and an answer together. Her patterns blazed brilliant white, and Jace felt warmth pour through him like sunlight after an endless winter. They stayed like that, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other's breath, until the stars outside seemed to shine just for them. Somewhere in the ship's depths, he could almost swear he felt the engine's pulse stronger, as if Celestara itself was happy. The choice of starlight. The ship's deterioration accelerated overnight. Jace woke to alarms echoing through the corridors, red emergency lights casting harsh shadows across his quarters. He dressed quickly and ran toward the engine chamber, following the streams of Stellari women moving with practiced urgency through the passages. The scene below was chaos. One of the main star cores had dimmed to barely a flicker, and the crystalline conduits feeding it were fracturing, sending cascades of sparks across the chamber floor. Nessa stood at the central console, her skin patterns flashing rapid-fire commands to the teams working desperately to stabilize the system. What happened? Jace called out as he reached her side. Cascade failure, Nessa said without looking up, her voice tight with strain. We have days now, not years. Maybe less. Her patterns flickered between orange urgency and dark blue despair. Mirren arrived moments later, her usual grace replaced by swift determination. She moved to the damaged core, placing her hands on its surface, and her entire body lit up as she tried to commune with the dying system. The other Stellari joined her, forming a circle, their patterns synchronizing into waves of light that flowed into the engine. But it wasn't enough. The core continued fading. There has to be something we can do, Jace said, studying the readouts with growing desperation. Nessa finally turned to him, and the look in her eyes made his stomach drop. There is. The old texts describe a synchronization ritual, the one the prophecy spoke of. She pulled up ancient diagrams on her display, complex patterns showing a human form connected to the ship's neural network. It requires someone with compatible genetic markers to interface directly with Celestara's core consciousness. To become, temporarily, one with the ship. To convince it to live. Her voice dropped. But the process is dangerous. The neural feedback could burn out your mind, leave you catatonic. Or worse. How dangerous? Jace asked quietly. The texts suggest a 60% mortality rate. Mirren had joined them, her expression anguished. Jace, we cannot ask this of you. We will not. You're not asking, he said, looking between them. I'm offering. Nessa's patterns flared white. You would die for people you've known mere weeks. I would try to save people who deserve to live. Jace met her fierce gaze, then Mirren's tear-bright eyes. And maybe I found something here worth staying for. The words hung in the air between them. Mirren's hand found his, squeezing tight. Nessa looked away, her patterns swirling with emotions too complex to read. There's another problem, Jace continued, forcing himself to think practically. Even if I survive the synchronization, even if we restore the engines, where do we go? You said you've lost your way. What's the destination? Mirren pulled up a star chart, her fingers trembling slightly. Our ancestral home world, Vayara. But its location was lost in the plague years. We've been searching for 3 generations with no success. Jace studied the chart, something tickling at his memory. Wait. Show me your current position relative to the Ferro sector. As the map shifted, his pulse quickened. I know this region. I've hauled cargo through here for 15 years. And about 8 months ago, I dropped supplies at a survey station that had just discovered ruins on a planet matching your descriptions. Breathable atmosphere, 3 moons, ancient structures made of the same crystal as your ship. Nessa grabbed his shoulders, her patterns blazing gold. You know where Vayara is. I can get us there. If we can get the ship moving again. The hope that flooded Mirren's face was almost painful to witness. but it was quickly tempered by fear. Then we prepare the ritual. Tonight. Before the core fails completely. The hours that followed blurred together. The Stellari prepared the central chamber, arranging crystalline interfaces in complex geometric patterns. Jace was brought to a preparation room where they dressed him in garments woven with conductive threads that would facilitate the neural connection. Nessa came to see him as the sun set, or what passed for sunset on a ship between stars. She stood in the doorway, her patterns muted and uncertain. "I need to tell you something," she said finally. "Before you risk everything." "Nessa." "I feel things for you I shouldn't," she interrupted, the words tumbling out. "I watched you with Mirren. I see how she looks at you, how you look at her. And it's right, it's good. She deserves happiness after carrying our burdens for so long." Her voice caught. "But I need you to know that I see you too. That if things were different, if I were braver." Jace crossed to her and pulled her into an embrace. She tensed for a moment, then melted against him, her arms wrapping tight around his back. Her patterns washed over them both in waves of amber and rose. "You are brave," he murmured into her hair. "You're the bravest person I've met. And Nessa, what you feel, it matters. It means everything. But my heart." "I know," she whispered. "It chose her." "I know," she pulled back, pressing her palm briefly to his chest, right over his heart. "But I had to tell you. Before tomorrow. Just in case." She kissed his cheek softly, her lips warm and gentle, then turned and left before he could see her cry. That night, Mirren came to him. She entered his quarters without knocking, and in the starlight streaming through the viewport, she looked ethereal. Her patterns were the deep indigo of night sky, shot through with silver like distant galaxies. "I'm frightened," she admitted, sitting beside him on the narrow bed. "I've led my people through so much hardship, made so many difficult choices. But the thought of losing you tomorrow," her voice broke. Jace took her hand, then her face, drawing her close. "Then let's not think about tomorrow. Just tonight." What followed was tender and desperate in equal measure. They explored each other slowly, learning the map of bodies and hearts, the places where touch brought gasps, where kisses deepened into something profound. Her patterns blazed across every inch of her skin, pulsing in rhythm with their shared breathing, turning the room into a galaxy of light. When they finally lay tangled together in the darkness, Mirren traced patterns on his chest with her fingertips. "Whatever happens tomorrow," she whispered, "know that you've already saved me. You reminded me what it feels like to hope. To want something beyond mere survival." "I'm coming back to you," Jace promised, pulling her closer. "We're going to reach Vayara. Together." She kissed him one more time, soft and lingering, tasting of salt and starlight and promises too fragile to speak aloud. Home among the stars. The ritual chamber pulsed with gathered energy as Jace entered at dawn. Hundreds of Stellari lined the circular walls, their patterns synchronized into a single flowing rhythm of light that washed over the space in waves. Nessa stood at the technical controls, her expression composed but her patterns betraying her anxiety. Mirren waited at the chamber's center beside the primary interface, a crystalline throne surrounded by filaments of pure light. "Are you ready?" Mirren asked as he approached. Her eyes searched his face as if memorizing every detail. "As I'll ever be." Jace managed a smile. "Just keep that spot warm for me. I'll be back before you know it." He settled into the interface chair. Immediately, the crystalline filaments began extending toward him, seeking connection points. Nessa's voice came through speakers, calm and professional. "Remember, once synchronization begins, you'll feel Celestara's consciousness merging with yours. Don't fight it. Let the ship in, but maintain your sense of self. You need to stay anchored or you'll be lost in the neural network." "Understood." "Jace." Nessa's voice softened. "Be careful. Please." The filaments touched his temples, his spine, his chest. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the universe exploded into his mind. He was everywhere and nowhere. He could feel every rivet in Celestara's hull, every flicker of power through countless conduits, every breath taken by every Stellari woman aboard. The ship's pain crashed over him like a tsunami. 300 years of slow degradation, systems failing one by one, the desperate loneliness of a dying vessel carrying the last hopes of a fading people. It was too much. Jace felt himself fragmenting, his consciousness scattering like stars across the void. Then, an anchor. Mirren's voice, cutting through the chaos. Jace, stay with us. Remember who you are. He grasped at her words like a lifeline. Yes. He was Jace Thorne. Cargo hauler. Storm survivor. The man who loved Mirren Ashwin and wanted desperately to see her smile again. Slowly, he began integrating with Celestara rather than drowning in her. He felt the ship's core consciousness, ancient, vast, tired beyond measure. She had carried her people so far, tried so hard, but couldn't find the strength to continue. I know you're exhausted, Jace whispered, his voice echoing through metal and crystal and empty space. I know you want to rest. But they need you. Just a little further. I'll show you the way home. I promise. He pushed the coordinates toward Celestara's navigation systems. The location of Vayara burned into his memory. At first, the ship resisted, too tired, too hurt. But then Jace showed her something else, his memories of the Stellari. Mirren's gentle strength. Nessa's fierce passion. Hundreds of women working together, singing together, their patterns creating beauty even in the face of extinction. They're your children, he told Celestara. Your daughters. They deserve to see their home. They deserve a chance to bloom again. Something shifted in the vast consciousness around him. Curiosity. Then determination. Then something that felt almost like love. Power surged through the ship. The dying cores suddenly blazed brilliant white. Energy cascaded through every system, restoring, repairing, renewing. Celestara sang with a voice that echoed through her hull, and every Stellari woman in the chamber gasped as their patterns lit up in sympathetic response. Jace felt the ship's gratitude wash over him like warm rain. Then, gently, Celestara began withdrawing from his mind, pulling back the connections, letting him return to himself. The filaments retracted. Jace slumped in the chair, gasping, every nerve on fire. Hands caught him, Mirren on one side, Nessa on the other, both supporting him as he struggled to remember how to exist in just one body again. You did it, Mirren breathed, tears streaming down her face, her patterns a riot of joy. The cores are stable. All systems are responding. You saved us. We saved each other, Jace managed, his voice hoarse. Celestara just needed to remember why she was fighting. The journey to Vayara took 3 weeks. Jace spent the first recovering, his neural pathways healing from the synchronization. Mirren rarely left his side, and Nessa visited daily with reports that grew progressively more optimistic. The ship was healing herself now, systems coming back online that had been dormant for generations. When Vayara finally appeared on the viewscreens, a blue-green jewel of a world with 3 moons hanging in attendance, the entire ship erupted in celebration. Patterns flared in every color imaginable. The Stellari sang in harmonics that made the air itself vibrate with emotion. Mirren found Jace on the observation deck, watching the planet grow larger as they approached. She slipped her hand into his, her patterns a gentle gold. What will you do now? She asked quietly. We can make a shuttle to take you back to your sector. You've given us everything we needed. You're free to go home. Jace turned to her, seeing the hope and fear warring in her eyes. I am home, he said simply. If you'll have me. I'd like to help your people rebuild. See what Vayara has to offer. Spend more time learning your language, your customs, he paused, then added with a smile. Spend more time with their beautiful, brilliant leader. Mirren's patterns exploded into radiant light as she kissed him, pouring 300 years of hope and joy and relief into the embrace. Around them, the ship hummed contentedly, carrying her daughters toward the world that had been waiting for them all along. Nessa watched from the corridor, her own patterns shining with bittersweet happiness. She pressed her palm to the wall, sending a pulse of gratitude through Celestara's systems. Then she turned and walked back toward the engine rooms. There was so much work ahead, a whole world to explore, systems to adapt to planetary conditions, a civilization to rebuild. And perhaps, somewhere in that vast future, there would be room for her own happiness too. The storm had brought them Jace, after all. Who knew what other gifts the universe might send? As Celestara entered orbit around Vayara, her engines sang a song of homecoming that rippled across the stars, and every soul aboard looked toward tomorrow with something they'd almost forgotten how to feel. Hope. The end.